of unfinished business. House report ought to pass as amended by Committee Amendment B H-605, Committee on Education and Cultural Affairs on Bill and Act to amend the laws governing the process for a single municipality to withdraw from a regional school unit. HP 930, LD 1336, tabled February 27, 2018, till later today by Representative Herbig of Belfast, pending acceptance of committee report. Is it the pleasure of the House to accept the unanimous committee report? It's a vote. First reading of the bill.
Being enacted by the people of the state of Maine as follows. Section 128 MRSA, Section 1466, subsection 4 is enacted by Public Law 2009, Chapter 580,
Representative moves further reading of the bill be dispensed with. Is this the pleasure of the House? It's a vote. The clerk will read Committee Amendment B.
Committee Amendment B has file number H-605. Amend the bill in Section 1, subsection 4, in paragraph A by striking all the second paragraph. Page 1, line 31 to 35, now be inserted in the following.
Is this the pleasure of the House? It's a vote. Is it the pleasure of the House to adopt Committee Amendment B? Right. Okay. The chair recognizes the representative from Rumford, Representative Madigan.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I present House Amendment A with a filing number of H-637 to Committee Amendment B and move its adoption, and I wish to speak to my motion.
Representative Madigan presents House Amendment A with a filing number of H-637 to Committee Amendment B and moves its adoption. The clerk will read House Amendment A.
House Amendment A to Committee Amendment B has a filing number of H-637. Amending the amendment of the first block paragraph after the title of the fourth line, page 1, line 17, amendment by inserting after the following.
Is this the pleasure of the House? It's a vote. The representative may proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and ladies and gentlemen of the House. I rise on behalf of my constituents in the town of Woodstock, and I speak for them because one thing that this bill does is it includes binding mediation in the process for withdrawal from a school system. There are 2 school districts in the state of Maine that have been recognized to have special, real unique considerations that this particular binding mediation would pose a significant problem for my school district. I want to read to you from Private and Special Law 1997. It is enacted to read, number 9, authorization required. Notwithstanding any withdrawal proceedings initiated or completed pursuant to the Maine Revised Statutes, Title 20A, Section 1405, prior to the effective date of this section, or any subsequent action taken by the town of Fry Island, the town of Fry Island is a part of and may not withdraw from School Administrative District 6 or its successor unless such withdrawal is first authorized by further amendment to this chapter. Well, there's a good reason for that, because at the time, Fry Island and the land value associated with it was part of the town of Standish. And yet Fry Island, made up mostly of summer homes because it's in the middle of Sebago Lake and the lake freezes, they wanted to become their own town. Well, one of the agreements in allowing them to become their own town and separate from the town of Standish was that they would stay in the school system, because all of us know that part of our property tax bill, a big part of it, is based on the value of our property. Well, there's a lot of value in the property on Fry Island, and yet they have 0 students. I'd like to move up to 2005 now and read you Public Law 2005, Chapter 2, Section D-69. Method of cost sharing exemption. Beginning in fiscal year 2005-6, the provisions of Maine Revised Statutes, Title 28, Section 15688, subsection 2, do not apply in determining the local cost of education of member municipalities in Maine School Administrative District number 6 and number 44. Cost-sharing formulas established between the member municipalities in these two administrative districts prior to January 1st, 2005 remain in effect until the formulas are changed pursuant to Title 28, Section 1301, subsection 3. Pursuant to Section 68, all other school administrative districts and community school districts whose cost-sharing formulas were established in accordance with Title 28, Section 1301 and 1704, respectively, remain subject to a phase-in approach to achieve the requirements of Title 20A, Section 15688, subsection 2, and must reach full implementation of this provision no later than fiscal year 08-09. The town of Newry, which is in SAD 44, is a very small town with maybe 20 students that has about 40% of the tax value in the school district, $481 million. That is so unusual that the legislature in 2005 recognized that when LD1 passed, which required school funding to be dealt with on a per student, a per pupil cost basis, that would make a huge shift from a town with a large value and a very small student population to all the other towns in the district. When Newry has been part of this same district, SAD 44, for 50 years. And they've always acknowledged, every town is assessed based on 100% of their value. It doesn't get any fairer than that. That's how we all pay our property tax. So my amendment simply says and acknowledges that these two systems have been uniquely assessed for many, many years. They really have to stay that way to make it reasonable for the cost of education in those areas. All my amendment does is it says, when it comes to mediation, and particularly binding mediation, those two districts are exempt from that provision of the law. It doesn't change any of the other good things that the Education Committee passed unanimously in LD 1336. And believe me, I'm a first-time legislator, and I've learned to appreciate, seriously, when a bill comes out of its committee unanimous and goes on the consent agenda. That is a big deal. And I don't take that lightly. But I also was elected by people in the town of Woodstock, and this would be a tax shift of over $2 million from the town of Newry. And if you took the average per pupil cost in the state, which is what they would be allowed to tuition their children back, maybe $10,000 a person, you're looking at a bill for Newry of about $200,000 versus over $2 million. There's a big difference in allowing a town to get out of a school system when they simply want a tax break versus a town like Andover that got out of the same system back in 2014. The issue there was the school board was talking about closing their elementary school. Well, the townspeople said, well, wait a minute, we want to have our elementary school, so we're going to get out and have our own school system. And believe me, they're paying dearly for that. I'm told over 5 mil rate increase to fund education in Andover. But it's important that their kids stay in their elementary school. But here's the difference. The SAD eliminated the cost of that elementary school, so it wasn't that big of a burden. What Newry proposes to do is stop paying their fair share and simply tuition those children back to the same school system. There's no savings in the school system, and yet the burden on the other three towns is going to be very high. So I ask you to support my amendment. Very important for people in my district. Thank you.
The chair recognizes the representative from Bridgeton, Representative Ginsler.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker and members of this House, I rise in objection to this motion to adopt this amendment, and these are my reasons. First, it opens the door to carve-outs in a law that seeks to be fair and just to all school districts and municipalities. Second, these carve-outs will ensure a repetition of the endless bills that come before the Education Committee asking us to solve disputes regarding this issue. That's the withdrawal from a school district. Third, after many hours and days devoted to working a solution that is fair, we voted not once, but twice over 2 years, unanimously, to pass LD 1336. And lastly, and what brings us to this point about this amendment is one school district, even though there's mentioned two. But with regard, the reason that I object strongly is that SAD 44 has no private and special law exempting it from the withdrawal process outlined in our bill, in our law. And lastly, SAD 6 already arrived at a special law, so they are exempt de jure in its dispute with Fry Island. And that issue, by the way, is being challenged in the courts. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The chair recognizes the representative from Burlington, Representative Turner.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, I oppose this amendment to LD 1336. This amendment is a carve-out for two districts and, frankly, is the reason why we need to fix the law in Title 20A. The current law keeps a district hostage if the school board wishes to do so. It is my understanding that one town in District 44 has been trying to withdraw for well over 4 years and hasn't been able to do so because of the poorly written language in Title 20A. The amendment basically denies a divorce, holding two districts hostage in an unhappy marriage should they wish to seek to withdraw, as in the case of Newry. This amendment would continue the status quo in these towns if the school board chooses to do nothing. This amendment exempts District 44 and SAD 6 from clarity to the law, given the illusion that they could withdraw, but instead the amendment would continue to give the option, allowing the Board of Directors to have no timelines to respond to the withdrawal committee, thereby allowing the school board to use stall tactics. This amendment would give the option for the Board of Directors to not bargain in good faith, thereby increasing fees to this municipality and also to the whole district as a whole. Accordingly, I do not believe that it's the law's intent to hold a town hostage. This happened to my community and now to Newry. Please join me in rejecting this amendment, which is a carve-out for two districts in the entire state of Maine. Thank you, Madam Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House. Madam Speaker, may I request that the clerk reads the committee report, and may I request a roll call?
The representative from Burlington, Representative Turner has requested a roll call. In order for the chair to order a roll call, must have the express desire of 1/5 of the members present. All desiring a roll call, please signify in the usual manner. Sufficient number having requested a roll call. A roll call is in order. The clerk will read the committee report.
Unfinished business number 10 is a report from the Committee on Education and Cultural Affairs, an act to amend the laws governing the process for a single municipality to withdraw from a regional school unit. House Paper 930, LD 1336. It is unanimous committee report, and reporting ought to pass as amended by Committee Amendment B.
The chair recognizes the representative from Newport, Representative Fredette.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House. It's not often that I get up to speak in support of an amendment in which the committee on this side of the aisle has opposed. However, I find the argument in regards to the I find two issues here: the underlying bill itself and then the amendment. And I think we see a consensus, obviously, in regards to the underlying bill. The question that's arisen from the amendment is we now seek to impose a state answer to now a question which has been ongoing in 2 school districts. And so essentially, in my opinion, what the state is doing is the state is stepping in and saying, we are now going to mandate X to solve these issues and these problems. What I believe is the more proper approach is to let the local people, i.e. home rule, resolve those issues. Now, it may be taking some time, but oftentimes what we see is when the local municipalities have the ability and the fate to determine their own destiny, then those sorts of resolutions tend to last longer, and it seems to resolve disputes. Now, in these 2 specific examples, in my opinion, in these 2 school districts, what you're going to see now is the department in this new process coming in to intervene and to essentially mandate a solution. I don't think that that's consistent with home rule. And, again, now we're jumping into the middle of this process, and we are, in fact, picking winners and losers. That's the end result of this bill. So while I think it's fair to say we as the state are now going to pass a bill, and going forward, this is the new set of rules, the new set of laws going forward, everybody has due notice for that. All the local people have due acknowledgement of, okay, these are the rules going forward. When we jump in the middle of a process, when a process has been ongoing under a certain set of rules, I think we overstep our bounds. Now, I don't know which side is right and which side is wrong, but I think inevitably the school districts in question here, these 2, are going to resolve the issue, particularly given recognition that the legislature is obviously brought this up and said, hey, look, guys, you need to solve this problem. But I just think that it's fundamentally wrong for us to essentially come in the middle of the process and impose essentially a new mandated process on it. I think in the end, quite frankly, what you may see is, I know I would recommend to the school board, hey, look, the state can't do this, let's bring a lawsuit. So I think what at least I interpret from this particular bill is let the new process go forward, let the 2 school districts in question continue to resolve their disputes. Sooner or later they're going to, but I think that this opens up an avenue for both of these school districts and or these individual towns to basically run to court and say, whoa, you can't get a new set of laws in place when we've been trying to do this for a while. So I will be supporting the amendment and ask that you follow my light.
There are 6 members in the queue. The chair recognizes the representative from Dover Foxcroft, Representative Higgins.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House. I'm probably one of the few people here that's actually had a practical experience with what we're trying to address here today. Several years ago, I was the project manager for school consolidation for the Department of Education, and these rules came up at that particular time. And the debate within the department was, will people negotiate in good faith, or is there a need for mediation? Let me share a couple of experiences. About 3 years ago, I was hired along with another consultant to help the town of Wiscasset withdraw from the RSU that they had joined. The final bill for that withdrawal was just over $1.4 million. The issue that Wiscasset faced is how badly do we want to withdraw from a school district? And that was the demand by the school district. If you want to leave, this is what it'll cost you. I am thoroughly convinced that if mediation had been present at that time, that cost would have been substantially lower and more fair for the community of Wiscasset. Fortunately, they had been able to put substantial resources away from the days when they had Maine Yankee. So it did not have a significant impact on the taxpayers, but any other community it would have. Recently, a small town in my district, Atkinson, 324 people, wishes to leave and join another school district because of their belief it would provide more educational opportunities for their students. Well, obviously, the school district, they don't really want that to happen because it will increase taxes in the other communities. So that process has been ongoing for about a year and a half, and finally the town of Atkinson said it's important enough for us to accomplish our goals that we'll meet the financial demands of the school district they're leaving. They're going to pay about $250,000. Think of that, 324 of them, $250,000 plus a lot of other financial concessions for the ability to do that will impact 18 students. Mediation was long overdue in that community and would have provided a fair process to make sure that the town paid its fair share and its impact on leaving that school district. So in my mind, I would agree with good representative from Newport that there's an overlying issue here that needs to be addressed. There's an issue of providing a fair process, and mediation provides that process. And the Education Committee recognized that and passed this bill out not once, but as reported twice, by unanimous vote, and it's the second year in a row that bill is here before us. The issue that seems to be hanging here that endangers, I believe, the passage and final passage of this through the process is we have two outliers. And I'm very familiar with both of them from school consolidation, and a few years ago I was asked by the town of Standish to work with the Board of Selectmen about building perhaps a new high school. So I learned quickly about Fry Island. What we have in both cases, I believe, is essentially buyer's remorse. At the local level, agreements were made in good faith by all of the parties involved. And now we find, time later, that one party does not like the agreement in which they agreed to. I would hope that we would look at the big picture. I would support the recommendation that Representative Fredette made here just previously. I would ask that you reject the amendment and move forth on the general principle of the bill, and I ask for your support as we move forward on behalf of all the other communities in the state of Maine that are impacted by not having this language. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Pursuant to my authority under House Rule 201.1H, the chair would appoint the representative from Belfast, Representative Herbig, to serve as Speaker Pro Tem. The Sergeant at Arms will escort Representative Herbig to the rostrum to act as Speaker Pro Tem.
Chair recognizes Representative from Scarborough, Representative Siraki.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have a question I'd like to pose through the chair, if I might.
The member may proceed.
Thank you. I've heard a lot about letting home rule work things out I've also heard about stall tactics, and I guess it's a little unclear to me exactly what the stall tactics look like, and how long we're talking about. How long are these home districts stalling? If Maine statute allows for a process for towns to be considered to withdraw, if someone could please explain what those stall tactics look like, I think that would be helpful. Thank you.
Representative has posed a question through the chair. Any member that wishes to answer? The chair recognizes the representative from Burlington, Representative Turner.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I mentioned the stall tactics because when my district was withdrawing, the withdrawal committee gave the proposal to the school board, and the school board set on it for 180 days. There is no timeline in the current law that is set for the Board of Education. The timeline is on the side of the town that wishes to withdraw. So those are the stall tactics. They would say they would meet with us and then cancel meetings, and so before you knew it, 180 days had gone by. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The chair recognizes Representative from Presque Isle, Representative Stewart.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, as you know, I serve on the Education and Cultural Affairs Committee, so this was an issue that we heard multiple times, and as you've heard, for quite some time and at length in the committee, where we came to a consensus. And to give a little bit of the backstory behind what was happening, the whole reason that we got into this mess to begin with is in large part because of these special carve-outs that already exist. And yet, this amendment proposes to put those same special carve-outs back in to the bill that was supposed to fix that. And so, my point would be, if we're going to put these special carve-outs back in, we don't need the bill. This defeats the purpose of the bill if we put them back in. And I'd also point out, too, that a lot of the figures that have been tossed around today are based on speculation. They're speculation because we don't know what the new terms of the withdrawal would be. The process would be that they would go through binding mediation, and ultimately those terms would be set there. There's no way that we could know here and now what those numbers would be. It's probably fair to say that there would be a change, but whether that change is positive or negative for any party involved is impossible to know and impossible to predict in this moment. So I would urge my colleagues not to be intimidated by some of the numbers that have been tossed around during this debate. I would also state that if, in fact, this amendment did pass, I would urge my colleagues to simply vote against the bill if it comes to that. I hope that it does not. I hope that we can understand the amount of time and energy and effort that has gone into crafting a system that is for those extreme circumstances, namely for the players mentioned in this amendment, that will allow us to move forward as a state and have a system that allows everybody a fair chance to withdraw and gives those students who have withdrawn the choice of where to go afterwards. I think in the case of Newry, they're paying about $200,000 per student. So the fact I've heard speculation again that they're going to be tuitioning back into the school. I don't think that's accurate. There's a lot of private schools there. They could do whatever they want. Again, there's no way to know any of these things. The point is, we need a system that doesn't allow for easy maneuvers and skating around the issue at hand. And so with that, I hope that you would reject this amendment, and I appreciate your time.
The chair is pleased to announce in the presence of the gallery the students, teachers, and chaperones from the Bodenham Community School of Bodenham. They are the guests of the representative from Bodenham, Representative Berry, Representative from Harpswell, Representative McCrate, and the representative from Topsom, Representative Tepler. Will they please rise and accept the greetings of the House? The chair recognizes the representative from Hollis, Representative Marion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker Pro Tem. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, I stand in support of the amendment. LD 1336 as presented, not amended, is a one-size-fits-all. This is not a one-size-fits-all situation. We have seen the light before this to exclude these two school districts from in a private and special law for funding of education. This bill won't work for those two districts. The amendment is very important to the district that I represent, which is SED number 6. The issue there is an island in Sebago Lake. It's inhabited 6 months of the year. They're all second homes for folks that are trying to get away from paying their fair share of education. I am definitely and positively opposed to that and hope that you will support the pending amendment. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Chair recognizes Representative from Bridgeton, Representative Ginsler.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I'm rising, and I asked the House indulgence. I'm rising a second time, but I wanted to answer the representative from Scarborough in regard to illustrating stalling tactics. And this is a very good illustration, and it has to do with the issue at hand. On November 5th, 2014, Newry, a town in SAD 44, began its withdrawal process and is now in its 14th 90-day extension. 41 months have passed since the withdrawal process was started, and there's no end in sight. So that's just another example. And Madam Speaker, I also would like to address the issue about whether the state has any, and that came up, if the state has any right to have a position in this, or whether this is strictly local control. I would say that we have a rather fuzzy law on the books now that does not serve us well, and that people go to try to resolve these issues. It's a state law. And I would be more than happy if I never, ever had to have a public hearing on this type of bill again. Believe me. Never want to see one again. However,
the member will defer. The House will be in order.
These bills come to us routine.
The member will defer. Disruptions while members are speaking is not tolerated in this chamber. Thank you. Thank you. The member will proceed.
Thank you very much. So, Madam, the fact of the matter is that we didn't go to these bills and as a state stick our nose into the local issues. The bills came to us, and they come to us routinely. And so we are asked to play Solomon, and we did. We worked it and worked it and worked it. We didn't shy away from it, and we came up with a unanimous, I believe, very fair and equitable solution. And so, again, Madam Speaker, I would say that the state does play a role if it can clear up the law, and that's exactly what this does. Thank you.
The chair requests that the Sergeant at Arms escort the representative from Freeport, Speaker Gideon, back to the rostrum to resume her duties as Speaker of the House.
The chair recognizes the representative from Scarborough, Representative Siraki.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you for indulgence here. I would like to pose one more question. I think I'm a little confused. It sounds, thank you. It sounds to me like the amendment before us negates the bill, and I wondered if someone could make sure that I understand that correctly. That's how I view this. Thank you.
The representative from Scarborough, Representative Saraki, has posed a question. Anyone who wishes to answer? The chair recognizes the representative from Prescott, Representative Stewart.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The point of the bill, as it came to us, was to establish a uniform process for when those districts reach that clashing point and nobody wants to budge. And so this is particularly the case in those districts which have been established in the debate to this point, namely Newry and Frye Island. And so if you're going to exempt them, at least in my opinion, and certainly in fact it does negate the fact, because it's no longer, you've carved out some districts, so it no longer applies to everybody. It applies to most but not all, but in my opinion defeats the purpose of why the bill is before us to begin with, and has unanimous support. Thank you.
Chair recognizes the representative from Burlington, Representative Turner.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I apologize for speaking a second time. What hasn't been pointed out and I left out was the fact that once an agreement, a withdrawal agreement, is made between the two parties, the town then has to hold votes. The third and final vote has to be a 2/3 vote of those voting on that day. That's the local component once both parties have something to put before the town. So 2/3 vote, as we know and we saw here today, is a very high threshold, as it should be. Thank you, Madam Speaker, ladies and gentlemen.
The representative from Bridgeton, Representative Ginsler, having spoken twice, requesting unanimous consent to address the House for a third time. Hearing no objection, the representative may proceed.
I thank you very much. I appreciate that. It most definitely does negate the bill. It absolutely opens the door to going back through the continuous loop of coming back to the legislature and the Education Committee to solve this, a local dispute. Thank you.
Chair recognizes the representative from Bethel, Representative Head.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to speak to the amendment. I rise in support of the amendment, actually. We are in a situation in SAD 44 that is unfortunate that we haven't solved it in the amount of time that it's taken. I refer to this report that you all have, and there has been extensions, not all made by Newry. Some of them were made by the school district, just to clear that up. Now, there were 4 people that started this withdrawal petition, and 4 people only. Not everybody in Newry wants to withdraw, and it's made very clear in another letter that you received from Sunday River.
Representative will defer. Members may not use props as they're speaking in the chamber. The representative may proceed.
We'll do this, okay? But in the letter from Sunday River, which is one of the larger employers in the area, they sent a letter, which you all received, and they say that they would be remiss in not voicing their belief in disfunding our school in any manner, would terminate all of our children's future and variable in the town surrounding, take away from education opportunities and respect, goes against the desire to be part of a strong community. And that's what we are. We're a very strong community. But again, 4 people in Newry wanted the withdrawal and signed the withdrawal request. 95 of the people that own property and pay taxes in Newry don't live in Newry. Some of them live in Europe. Some of them live. I brought along that. If anybody would like to look and see what the town commitment book says about the number of people that do not live in Newry. Who pays for the tax break that this would give Newry? 4,600 people in the other 3 towns would be impacted by an increase in their taxes. 42% of them are elderly on a fixed income. They don't know what they're going to do if this happens. We've been working to solve this problem with them. It has been rejected at least 3 times, the recommendation from NURI. It has been rejected 3 times. The mill rates for the towns right now as they stand: Greenwood, 13.44 is their mill rate already. Bethel, 13.22. Woodstock, 11.80. And Newry, 8.73. So the impact this tax increase would put on these people is devastating, not to mention what's going to happen to the districts, what's going to happen to the school, the student programs, all of those things. The impact is very, very important. So again, I rise in support of this amendment and hope that you will follow my light and vote against the bill and vote for this amendment. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Chair recognizes the representative from Dover Foxcroft, Representative Higgins.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for allowing me to speak a second time. The concern that I think we would all have about a series of doom and gloom scenarios for the school systems that we hear today being described aren't really accurate. Because when the total allocation for a school system comes forth, determined by the Department of Education, there is a state and local share. And if you withdraw a substantial amount of valuation from a school district, then the state allocation is going to go up substantially. Because there'll be a mill rate, I believe it's 8.3 for next year. They'll multiply that by the then existing valuation, and that will be the local commitment. And the difference between that number and what the total allocation is, which would be substantially lower now because of that higher valuation, when that disappears, the state will make up the difference. So the people who are really going to get hit with paying the additional are not the local people. It's not the local people. It's going to be the state of Maine will be making up that substantial difference. So the impact on the school system and the local taxpayers should be very minimal by withdrawing those and the state making up the difference because of the state local share in the school funding formula. I wanted to make sure that was clarified. Thank you.
The chair recognizes the representative from Standish, Representative Ordway.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, I rise in support of this amendment. The town of Fry Island made a deal. They made a deal with the town of Standish that if the town of Standish would vote to let them withdraw, they would forever stay with SAD 6. I'll just go with a deal is a deal. As far as the funding, if the state makes up the difference, it's still taxpayer money. Now, it's not Standish's taxes, it's all of your taxes. This amendment affects 2 districts with substantial out-of-state homeowners, second homeowners. What they're asking to do now would be that everybody else in the state of Maine pick up the tab so that they can enjoy their vacation home a little cheaper. Please follow my light and support this amendment.
The pending question is acceptance of House Amendment A. Is the House ready for the question? A roll call is in order. The chair will open the vote. The Sergeant at Arms will secure the chamber. recognizes the representative from Elliott, Representative Lawrence, and inquires as to how he would like his vote to be recorded.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I wish to be recorded as yay.
The representative from Elliott, Representative Lawrence, will be recorded as yay. First call of absentees. Second call of absentees. There are 5 members in their seat who have not yet voted. The chair will close the vote. The clerk will run the total. The chair will announce the vote. 104 having voted in the affirmative and 38 in the negative. The motion prevails. Is it now the pleasure of the House that Committee Amendment B, as amended by House Amendment A thereto, be adopted? It's a vote. Is there objection to suspension of the rules for the purpose of giving this bill its second reading at this time? Hearing none, second reading of the bill by title only.
An act to amend the laws governing the process for a single municipality to withdraw from a regional school unit.
This bill, having had its true several readings under suspension of the rules, is it now the pleasure of the House that it be passed to be engrossed as amended and sent for concurrence? It's a vote. It'll be sent to the Senate. Is there objection to sending this matter forthwith? Hearing none, it is so ordered. I'm on 13 now, right? The chair now lays before the